Hello, everyone, and welcome back to SEOconspiracy.com. How are you, Laurent?
Ah, always very good when I'm talking SEO with my friend Dixon.
We're on my we're on my least favorite topic, domain authority. So when I start with domain, I'm not talking about Moz's metric here. I'm talking about the concept of a domain having authority. I think is at best a simplistic idea, and at worst it's completely wrong. It's totally dangerous to think that Google's algorithms are trying to do things because you've got a link from a good website. A good website is not how Google is storing information at all. They're storing information in two ways. Well, I suppose in Google My Business maybe, but in two ways. They're either storing it by the web page, or they're storing ideas and entities and then connecting ideas to those entities and topics. The influence of a website as a concept, I think, is wrong. I think every page on the internet has to stand up to its own, has to stand on its own. And the only reason that we keep on getting focused on, domains as opposed to pages is because, we associate ourselves with brands. And I think that the homepage of a lot of websites are very, very strong.
Exactly.
So the homepage is very, very strong, and that can then influence, how those pages link will influence massively the effect of the internal pages within there. But it's I can get a link from eBay. It doesn't matter. It won't do me any good. You can on so many websites create user-generated content that have no real effect on search. And I think that we have this. Yeah, I can't understand why SEOs keep on going on about, I'm going to get you links from, domain authority of whatever, because page authority maybe,
Well, for sure, authority, trust, those are goals, objectives. They want to figure that out.
Yeah.
What I'm against is those scores, because Moz did the first one, but they all do it now. Okay, they all do it, and it's the way that score is built by SEO magicians who made up something. It's not based on any scientific documents. It's not based on, and that's why I wanted to compare with the interpretation of the PageRank and topical PageRank by Majestic, because even if it's the interpretation, it's still based on something documented very well.
Yeah, I think the Majestic stuff is interesting because you can see trust flow in three different locuses. You can see trust flow and citation flow at a page level, or we wrap all that up into a subdomain level, or we wrap it up into a domain level. But I'm still of the opinion that you should pay attention to the page level only. And so for me, personally, when I look at Majestic's data, which I have a lot of faith in, when I look at trust flow of a site, I don't look at the trust flow of a site. I look at the trust flow of a homepage and use that as a proxy for some kind of idea of how much the homepage is worth. And I try not to look at the domain level statistics personally, because they can be very, very misleading.
And if you do look, I remember you saying that you always need to look at the root domain.
Well, yeah. So if you are the problem with the maths on Majestic stuff is that in order for us to give, because we do all the maths at a page level, we do all the maths at the page level. I say we, I'm not there so much anymore. So they last time I saw, they were doing the maths at the page level. And And so, in order to give you a score, but in the system, you can then say, please give it at the domain level, or the page level, or the subdomain level. But in order to give a score of how much the website is worth at the domain level, it has to work out all of the pages on that domain, and then work out some kind of aggregate, and then score it against all the other web pages on the planet to be able to do that. So if you then do it at a subdomain, it's then working out all the subdomains on the planet and comparing against them. So you're then comparing, if you end up comparing a www.mysite.com with a root domain, mysecond-site.com, then you're actually comparing a subdomain with a root domain, which is different maths. You're now got a maths between apples and oranges. But if you go back, if you either go all the way to the root level, then at least you're doing it by the root for everything. But of course, but that won't help for blog spots and things like that. But if you do it at the page level and then take the home page, then at least you could argue that page is the strongest page on the website, and all the other links and all the other stuff then gives that page its juice, and then it's up to the site as to how it distributes that juice. Anyway, I still like to go back to a page level metric where I can.
It makes sense because that's the way Google analyzes the web anyway.
And even if it goes further, as Google tries to propagate its tentacles of knowledge out to other things, at some point a podcast will have some kind of authority. Why a mention in a podcast is almost exactly the same concept as a link on a web page. They're both conveying a level of trust about a product or a service, or a signal of importance. So as Google goes out and starts collecting images and videos and all sorts of other types of data, of course there's probably going to end up being some kind of proxy to a link within those signals as well. So if I've got a big banner behind me saying inlinks.net, then potentially Google will read that at some point and just make a decision.
We're going towards that anyway, because they want to also classify information in real life anyway. They want to
of course. They want to go way beyond the internet. In fact, web pages are becoming in many ways less and less important to Google's entire ecosystem, because Google is trying to just go wherever the information is, and that's not necessarily a web page anymore.
My hint was that AMP was the beginning of this Google all around you with the augmented reality, because the information needs to be very simple to analyze and process and so on. So, my opinion, just my conspiracy theory, but that was just the beginning of that type of Google, which will be all around us.
I don't think. I mean, I'm putting it out there. I don't think AMP will last. I think that it's the beginning of the end now for AMP. But
it was just a tryout. It was just like how do we simplify information and process it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think, but it's two different things, isn't it? It's a processing information more simply, so getting it faster for the user and stuff like that. But Google always has a second angle, a second bow to a string to every bow, and the other one is. And it's now using our protocols, our technologies, and we can direct the underlying. You can build what you like as long as you build it on my land. That's and I can charge you rent later. That's that kind of situation really. And I think that a lot of people saw through it. A lot of people, on the other hand, love it, and they think it's a really, really good thing. And I guess there's both of those arguments are correct. But in the end of the day, I think you're right. They're trying to make everything simpler and readable and understandable. Of course, the downside of that, of course, is that we're trying to make things simple for machines, but humans have to read the same simplicity as well. So it makes us. Then maybe is that making us dumber?
Do you have a good internet connection? Do you have the fiber?
I've got a optic cable.
Yeah. So you realize how slow is the web because you have crazy fast internet connections, but the website still loads so slow. So I'm like, okay, we're not there yet.
No, yeah. When I go down to my cottage in Snowdonia, that's still using a copper wire, and it just about still does these videos. But then I know that you go out to a lot of other countries, and it's a much worse experience for everybody. But yeah, 5G's coming, so that'll all work. They'll get there.
Supposedly, it's when people will be streaming 24/7.
Yeah.
The chip in the brain and
yeah.
But okay,
they would be going mad very quickly then. Yeah.
We get sidetracked because domain authority. So the main problem is, can you tell us, if you were Google, how do you figure out this trust, or how can you trust, or how can you because that's what it's all about, authority. How do you figure out who is we know PageRank.
Yeah, well, then this thing, we do have PageRank. I mean, you make the point that you don't like the fact that the tools give a score for for anything like that, but ultimately Google has scores. It's got scores, and so the problem is, of course, that we may, as tool makers, put that score out and pretend that this is some kind of score that Google pays attention to. There may be no correlation between our score and their score for something, so that could be wrong. But I have found that it's quite difficult to get rid of a score. So in the inlinks, we got a page optimization score, and Fred has decided it's a percentage. It's a score out of 100 for me. It's a he's got percent on there, and we've argued internally about whether that's a percentage or a score or what. But the idea of getting rid of it is problematic because when an SEO is big enough to realize that the score is a guide, not a mantra, then fine. But up until that point, they still need to have some kind of idea as to whether you're moving in the right direction. So if you're trying to make your site better, then you need something to put a marker in the sand of where you were yesterday, so you can see whether you're better today.
True. I agree with you 100%. It's like green light, orange, red.
Yeah. Okay.
As simple as that. The problem comes when, in the business of selling and buying links, they use this kind of metrics to pop, because you can easily fool those metrics if you know how to be links.
I mean, absolutely. But then again, I'm not a person that goes around buying links anyway. So, but certainly, I would see every link. Pretty much, if you look at a link, you know whether it's manipulated as a human being most of the time, don't you? You know whether it's manipulated. You know whether it's going through an affiliate link. You know whether it's just cookie cutted or sold or out of place somehow. And then the genuine stuff comes in, and it's genuine stuff because it's on a site that you would have loved to talk about your stuff anyway.
Exactly.
It's a competitor or an industry leading news site, or somebody that's authority or that you knew about the website before you got the link, but only because you respected it and read it and used it yourself. But most links that you buy, they come from domains you've never heard of.
And we spoke about this before. I told you the secret how they fight it, meaning they cut off the website that is flagged selling links.
Yeah.
Won't see anything happening. It's not dropping in ranking or anything, but the
just
page
passes no link flow.
Yep. So people are buying air.
Useless stuff. Yeah. So we did a thing many years ago. Well, actually, I mean, you still see it on the Majestic blog, but you can use a tool that we have for Click Hunter, which is it tries to find different sites that are linking to the same place. So what you can do is, if you find a page that is selling links, then what you can do is say, well, probably all of those links on that page potentially are bought. So I can take those three, and let's say that there's one page and it's linking to 3 or 4 different websites on that page that are paid links in that article. You can put those links into Click Hunter. So you're then finding 4 people that are buying links, and then they're all in a little clique, and then you go and find all of the other websites in the world that are linking to those 4 websites, and there you go. So I can't believe that Google doesn't use that kind of methodology to find link farms. No. So even if you ban Majestic Spot, doesn't matter. You haven't banned Google Spot, so Google knows.
For sure. Anyways, just to give practical advice to people who either they buy it or they get it organically, whatever they do to get a good link on a good website, especially those big press websites, any major site that publishes a lot of content, don't think for 1 second is that the page where is your link, because it's attached to a domain, will have any kind of power if you don't take care of it. We say link the link.
Yeah.
Even if it's not your website, even if it's a page on the BBC, and especially if it's a little bit old, you need to push it back.
Yeah. So by link the link, I'm assuming you mean get links to that link to that page, that page you may have to prop up for it to have to get over a threshold of authority. Yeah, and I think that's a good bit of advice. And if you're proud of the content, why wouldn't you link to that content? If you're proud of it,
or even a simple directory. You spend 20 minutes filling out the form to submit your site, and then you have it's just the rule of a link builder. You have to build links to the page that's hosting your link, because if you can't count on the domain to push that page.
So on my on DixonJones.com, I don't know if this makes any difference at all, really, but it's really because I can't find my knowledge panel any other way. So on my About Us page, I link to my own knowledge panel just so that I've always got the link there, because it's some complicated thing that I can't find. And of course a link to my LinkedIn profile and my thing and my Twitter profile. Why wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm. Anyways, domain authority, I won't bother you with it for a little while. I'll leave
Thank you very much. Yeah. And I know now that John Muller's going to come up and say, yes, your brand is really, really important, or something like that. So they're going to say something like that. And of course, the other argument is that brand is important. Jason Barnard will sit there and very much talk about brand SERPs, and that's his thing, and he's right in that the stronger your brand, the easier everything else is. So there is, I suppose, some kind of concept between a thing, a brand and power. But when it comes down to the maths of Google, that's a byproduct of things.
John Mueller got trapped by Moz already, not by Rand, by what's his name, Michael, one of the guys from Moz. He interviewed John and asked him, "Okay, what's up with domain authority?" And John's answer, instead of shutting his mouth, said, "Yeah, we do have something that kind of,
Okay.
Well, he's not an engineer. He's a community manager.
Yeah.
It's not his place to answer that kind of thing because the guy jumped on it and I was like, hey, domain authority is confirmed by Google. That's also another big problem with the communication. When there's a quote with an interview with the context of a webmaster hangout, and suddenly it becomes the truth.
I'll tell you what. There was another one. We could talk about another one that came out the other day when John Mueller on one of his training videos talked about text around snippets around anchor text, and all of a sudden Barry came out saying, that context is, Google cares about anchor text, not the words around it. And I thought, well, actually, if you look at what he said, then that's not true, really. But it's very easy. Barry Schwartz has love him dearly, has a tendency to jump on every clue and every suggestion, and often take things a little bit out of context. But at least he's quick. Next morning, all I need to do is read his daily thing, and I know what's happening.
It's most definitely a discussion for another day on the way the communication about the evolution of SEO. And I don't think it's normal that you hear secondhand from a random tweet something important. Last time was, by the way, guys, the RHEL next Prev never worked, okay? We couldn't figure it out. Oh, thanks. Thanks for the
useful to know. Glad I never used it. No. Actually, I think I did use it. So anyway.
All right. Anyway, next topic is very, very interesting, and I can't wait to hear your explanation because I think you.
What are we talking about? What are we on?
Something that you are probably in the unique position to know a lot better than anyone in the industry. How big is the web? How big is the web?
Oh, great. I own howbigistheweb.com. There's nothing at it, by the way, I own that domain.
Can we get a sense of...
Let's do it.
I have a couple of numbers, but okay. I think you know what's up, So
let's go and find out. Excellent.
Until next time. Thanks
See
for watching.
You then. Bye, guys.